Let's start this history of the Charles River Speedway with what it looks like last week. This is the Charles River Speedway Headquarters with what used to be stables for horses, but will now be little pop-up shops. And there's a drone view flying overhead, and you can see in the courtyard they've put up a bunch of tables which you can just sit at. You don't have to buy anything. The Notch Brewery is at one end, and then for this event, they pulled up a food truck nearby, so you could just, go eat the food. So anyway, it was a great event, and you can see they've done a fantastic job of restoring the Charles River Speedway Headquarters and stables. And now, let's get on to the history. When we first moved to Cambridge about 8 or 9 years ago, my daughter lived in Brighton. She'd gone to Mass Art, and we often drove by this building to visit her. It's between Soldiers Field Road and Western Avenue, and it's boarded up, and I was always curious about why nobody was using it, because it was a nice central location. Here it is in the map. I come down from North Cambridge, come around the Charles River, go down the Arsenal Bridge, and then we pass it right here as we went up the street. You can take Western Ave down, and then if you hang a little left onto North Harvard Street, you go straight into Harvard. But just to give you a general idea, and Harvard, MIT, Boston University, they're not that far away from it. Then recently, about a month ago, my friend DC said, "Oh, do you want to go check out the Charles River Speedway development redo, whatever?" And I didn't know what it was, but when we got there, I was like, "Oh, mystery solved." And this is sort of what the house looked like about a month ago. We went inside and we took photographs of inside courtyard that they're doing. This is, I say, about a month ago. It used to be horse stables from the early 1900s to the 1930s. You can sort of see how they're all stables here. They've been remade to be little stores, but you can see how they're stables. And here's a photograph that shows how it looked in 2014, roughly around the period I was driving by it, and now in 2020. This is from Google. And you can see they built a radius of like a condo luxury apartment across the street. Here's across the street again. We used to go to Emma's, it's this little old hardware store. It wasn't open when we even got there, and a vacant lot. And that was this huge, really nice, I don't know if it's a condo apartments or whatever. So how did it all begin? How did this building get built, which basically sits right here? In the 1800s, there was a huge slaughterhouse in Brighton over here. Here's a little picture of it. And they wanted to have something where people could take their horses and they called it a speedway, but they didn't mean speedway in our sense, like as a racetrack. They meant speedway as in your horse doesn't have to go down like a rutted cobblestone muddy street at, half a mile an hour. It can actually gallop, or, you can just have a nice little jaunt with your horse. So that was the idea. And this was the plan for it. So that's the map from before, and that Speedway Headquarters was right here. And here's the little speedway that would go down through the Charles. So you basically take your horse and you'd take a loop around. And there also used to be like a cement 1 mile track for motorcycles. So here's the Speedway Headquarters, that building in 1899. You can see actually where the stables and the other part, they were built later, because you can see a house right next to this, far behind. And this is the location of it in the maps. Is right at the beginning of the this path for the horses and people and bikes, and even a 1 mile concrete motorcycle thing. Here's the Arsenal Bridge, still the same as it is today. And if you walked across the street from here, this is what you would see. This is a Charles River right here, and this is what you would see. This is the Harvard Stadium over here, and this is the Speedway. Again, it's this thing. You can see how this is a turn right here, and they'll go all the way down here, and there'll be another turn. And there are people and their horses, going out for a weekend jaunt. And I just put the house, because the Speedway headquarters would be right here. Now, in the history of the Speedway that I've read, it took me a while to figure out the stuff they actually left out. So a half mile down the road in 1904, the Gentlemen's Driving Club. So there are many clubs involved in, horse racing or just having a horse or whatever. So a half mile down the road, so here's the Speedway headquarters. A half mile down the road right here, another house was built for people that were, in this club of horses. So the other one was probably more like a city type thing. This was like a private club built in 1904. This is a proposal right here, and this is what it actually looked like. And just to show you on a map again, this is a Charles River Speedway right here. Here's the Gentlemen's Club that's right over here. And its location, they already knew what they wanted to do, and you'll see that in a second. And this is an actual photograph of the club in 1906. As you can see, the cars in front of it. So, it's still at a period where horses were sort of the wealthy person's whatever. And right here, actually, you can see the stables. So here are more stables for the Gentlemen Club horses, for them to race around the track or do whatever. So these stables went back far. There are not many photographs of them that I could find. Now, what's important is 1910, because as the damming of the Charles River, here, the park, most of it was like mud flats. So if the river did rise and fall a little bit, and so that made any sort of track that you would build on this, we'll go back to here, on this little land right here, the river might come up or down. So if you want to really be able to build a track around here and not worry about the river, it needs to be dammed down here, which is what happened in 1910. So 1910 is a big year for the Charles River. And here's the racing track. So now that in 1912, so now that this river, it's not going to rise or it's not going to rise and flood the track because of the dam, they can build an actual track around that part of land, which is this little bulge right here. And these are the stables that I showed you before that you could see right here. This is the person back then just took a photo of the front and a photo of the side and sort of like stitched them together in a very crude way in 1914. And this is a photo from 1928. This is at Gentlemen's Clubhouse, and these are the stables. You can see they go way back. They would go way back here, and here's the track. So the track in 1928 was a very substantial affair, right? I mean, you had, you can see, I mean, it was very serious. They had a little inner thing, and here's like sort of like the old speedway going down, and this is a Soldiers Field Road. Here's an aerial view. Again, the Gentlemen's Club, and then this is the stables right here. And the way the horses would get to the track, as you can sort of see here, they'd come out of the stables and they go down this path, and they go down this path all the way down to here, and then they cross Soldiers Field Road, and then they go onto this thing to get onto the track. So they couldn't just go right out the front of the street onto the track. They really actually had to go take a long loop around. And in many newspaper articles and stuff, they complained about that. They didn't like that. They didn't want to go all the way around here. So they wanted to just go directly, and it's an issue. I want to point out also, because this is on public land, the Charles River Reservation, you couldn't charge people to watch horse races. So everything had to be free. So that limited the amount of investment that the Gentlemen's Club could make into the horse racing and stuff like that. Anyway, okay, so that's 1928. And this is a view, and I'm showing this because you can see here's Speedway Avenue, and this would have been the stables and the house. Now, this is an older map, or newer map, I should say. So you can see that actually they built 3 new stables, because in 1932 the clubhouse and stables burnt completely down, and this is a huge thing at the time. And this is a photograph of the house burning down, and even though they're concrete and everything. and then 1932, 44. Most of the horses died because they were locked into the stables because I guess they're racing horses and they were worried they'd be stolen. And humans never change; they never learn, right? You still hear about these types of things, right? So, nobody could find the keys, and of course the fire is burning. So, yeah, they couldn't find the keys. They couldn't get their act together, so the horses all died, except for a few horses. It's one that traveled 20 miles. It ran 20 miles to get away from the fire. Horses are no dummies. Anyway, this is some of the people and a few of the horses that they rescued. And of course, just like today, the first thing they did is they blamed these guys for the fire, right? The guys sweeping out the stalls. They blamed them anyway. And these are the so then after the stables and that clubhouse burnt down, they built these new stables right behind where the old stables were, and that's these 3 blocks here. So the old stables used to be here, and the clubhouse all burnt down in 1932, 1933. They built these, and again, like everything in history, they shouldn't have bothered because within years there'd be no horse racing because, of course, as you know, Depression, World War II. Anyway, these are the 3 new the 3 new stables. They're now gone, and here you can see them in a photograph from 1933. You can see the wreckage of the existing stables and whatever, and the new stables that had been built. And then, of course, we hit World War II. Let's put in this photo. This is actually in Boston. So what's weird is I can't find, I'd really have to go to the Boston Library and do some heavy research, but it's not easy to find out exactly when the Speedway was dismantled, but I believe it was 1958 because this is post-war, whatever. So I think 1958 the Charles River racetrack was removed because horses were really in steep decline because of the car. We're really reaching the car generation. And then between 1978 and 1991, I don't know when, but those 3 new stables were removed. And then around 1962, this park was developed. And this photograph is what really sort of drove my interest to really dig deep into this whole subject. I saw this one of these things first. I've always thought when you walk around the trees down here or anywhere in Boston, you're like, oh yeah, this is what it was like 200 years ago or even 100 years ago, whatever. But it wasn't like that even 60 years ago. So 60 years ago, they basically just bulldozed down every freaking tree along the Charles River Reservation. You can see there are hardly no trees here. So they put in a parking lot here. They put a little kiddie pool here. They put a theater here. That's a whole other subject, which I don't know a ton about. But anyway, it's cockamamie idea. It never really worked. It's just surrounded by this somehow moat or whatever. Anyway, you still can see I think 2 or 3 of these old stables, and this is the new radio station that's still there today. They put that up, and then as I said, until the 70s, the area was barren. This photo is from 1955, so you can see the racetrack again. I think in 58, so a few years later, I think they just basically mowed that all down, put in a parking lot, a kiddie park, and this little thing. But I also want to point out that Soldiers Field area, the whole area is basically barren. You just have the football stadium and the Harvard Business School, which was basically construction was finished around 1928. So 1928 you had all this, but still all this was barren. And this is where the headquarters house would be. That Gentleman's Club would have been right here, but now there's a radio station. And you can see almost very, very few trees. And this is a photo from recently, and this I just sketched around where the track would have been in this area. And I've gone down here and looked for trees that might have survived from the 50s or 40s, but I don't think there are any. There may be 1 or 2 or 3 around here. I need to look at it more, but I'm pretty sure they're all gone. Another thing I'd like to do in the future, if I can, is do a core sample. I bet you the track, if you put in 2 feet deep, took out a core, you'd find the track right along here. Anyway, this is what it looks like today. This is what the track would have looked like. So now I'm going to take you through some drone explorations. Here's the headquarters then in 1900 and today in 2020. There again, 1900 and 2020. So I'm circling with the drone, looking down towards Harvard, down what used to be the... Oh, and that building there was built later. Not sure the date. So now we're looking down what used to be the Charles River Speedway, and that's what it would have looked like if you're pretty much where that drone is right now. Maybe just a little bit off to the left, and that house would have been to the right. So now we're moving down the what used to be the Speedway, and we're going to rise up above so you can see the lay of the land. Once again, there's a photograph of the Speedway. So back in 1900, some of this would have been still like a road, but most of it would have been that Speedway to the left. And that little notch there, that bulge right there, has never been used as far as I can tell. I mean, now you can see, I think it's Northeastern Boathouse, and then the track is that next bulge down the road. So let's go back to another day where DC and I went to check out the Cambridge Speedway headquarters, and here we're rising above the headquarters. This is probably, I don't know, 3 or 4 weeks before the party, and you can see it has a little parking spot. There's another event space. We just been past it. This is actually looking towards where the Brighton Abattoir was, where that huge slaughterhouse was. And now I'm rotating back down towards Harvard, looking down the Charles River. And then again, when was that boathouse put in? Oh, I should have these dates handy. There's so much, so many dates and things I really need to, I just can't keep track of. I have enough material, actually, I think, for a great half an hour documentary if I would put in the time or hire somebody or whatever. Anyway, and there you can see the radius across the street. A very nice building. Here again is a courtyard for the new Speedway. We're now going to move on to the racetrack, and now the drone is flying above where it would be placed. You can see there are a whole bunch of trees there now. There's basically nothing back then when that photo was probably taken in 1928 or early 50s. The last footage I'll show you, this is coming from Cambridge. So I'm flying the drone from Cambridge, looking across the Charles River at where the racetrack used to be. And as I said, this is probably the most fascinating thing to me, is how the trees were all mowed down, 50, 60 years ago. And this was put in there, overlaying what it looked like in 1962 and today. And here is 1962 again. And back to today. I hope you've enjoyed this video. Thank you.